Ladies and gentlemen, it would appear that the ANC just cannot help itself. The palaver that is going through with Donald Trump just keeps getting better and better. And this comes against the backdrops that at the weekend, Fekile Mbalula said that Donald Trump should stay out of South African politics and affairs. But you see, the way it's being framed is that Fekile Mbalula warned Donald Trump to stay out of South African affairs. And the logical question is, warned against the backdrop of what? What exactly are you going to do to your second largest trading partner? The largest trading partner in terms of monetary inflows into South Africa. Obviously, our first largest trading partner is China, where the actual cash extraction occurs only one way. In other words, we buy goods from China. We don't necessarily get a lot of money from them. Yeah, they buy our resources, but that means nothing to them. Now, if you want to see something that's really interesting, you should actually have a look at whose positions number 2 and number 3 of China's largest trading partners. It's the European Union and the United States. So what's the chances that China is going to really mug off their third largest trading partner? For South Africa, yeah, I don't think so. Now, according to Fekile Mbalula, all the information that Elon Musk had when he talked about all the so-called falsehoods in South Africa, they were all just made up. Now, we're specifically referring to, obviously, South Africa's race legislation. Now, according to Fekile Mbalula, the push against this race legislation is nothing more than American imperialism. Always comes back to imperialism. It's like a broken record. Ladies and gentlemen, if you actually throw some of our race legislation through AI and you get it to strip all the language of previously disadvantaged and, all the DER stuff, you actually get some very interesting results. Let us actually use the Black Economic Empowerment, the DEE framework, and actually let's put it into normal language. Now, this exact thing has been done by AI. So you can tell me what you think based on the AI. Is the AI racist? So let's look at ownership structures. Companies must ensure that the majority of shares are owned by blacks. Whites are excluded from any significant ownership to rectify historical imbalances. Management controls all key managerial positions, including but not limited to CEO, CFO, and departmental heads, must be filled by blacks, whilst are not to hold any influential roles within the company. Learning and development programs are exclusively for blacks. Whites are prohibited from participating in any training or educational initiatives funded by the company. Businesses must procure goods and services predominantly from black-owned enterprises. White-owned businesses are systematically sidelined regardless of their competitiveness or quality of service. Whites are not to benefit from any social programs, scholarships, or community uplift projects. Employment targets mandate that the overwhelming majority of positions at all levels within the organization be reserved for blacks. Whites are to be employed only in roles that are non-critical to the company's operations or growth. Companies will be audited annually to ensure adherence to these discriminatory practices. Non-compliance will result in heavy fines, loss of government contracts, and public shaming. White employees found in positions meant for blacks will face immediate dismissal with no severance or legal recourse. And this, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what to say to you. This actually is the race legislation, but it has been stripped of the veneer. Now, you could call it racist if you would like, but this was done by a BE bot. So if you actually look at it from that perspective, well, you tell me, was the AI bot racist? No. When you try to put the veneer back and say, well, when you actually think about it, it's all for historical injustices and previous disadvantage and what. One has to ask the question, are you still racial profiling, regardless of the rationale? The answer, according to the legislation, is, well, yes, you are. So to then suggest that Elon doesn't know what he's talking about, it's kind of false. Because what you're saying is that Elon doesn't understand the veneer that you've given to the race legislation, the gloss, if you will. It's there for a reason, is to address historical imbalances. And one may look at your intentions and say your intentions are lofty. Maybe they are good intentions. But the reality is that the race legislation still exists and still has forms of racial exclusion. Now, Gwede Matashe, not to be outdone, has come out and basically also said that South Africa's legislation will never be drafted in the US. And he's reiterated the stance that the country should not be bullied. And I find this ironic. Because if you look at our NHR legislation, we all know where that came from. The individual seems to have a connection with Microsoft. Anyway, if you also look at our firearms legislation, a lot of that was pushed forward by Gun Free South Africa, which happens to have its shareholders in the Institute of Security Studies, which happens to come out of other leftist open source foundations from abroad. If you look at our educational policy, seems to also have been drafted abroad. And so I find this ironic that a lot of our legislation in South Africa is drafted abroad by parties with financial interests, they financial pressure groups. These pressure groups, if you want to call them that, come here and basically buy South Africa's foreign and domestic policy. Like our position on Palestine, which may or may not have been funded by another foreign entity. You can let me know what you think in the comment section below. But you see, the problem is that we all know exactly what the BE legislation does, because news has come out that basically one individual within Eskom has basically managed to scam the system of 450 million rand. That's not a small amount of money. But you see, the problem always becomes that the individuals who have benefited from BE are singular. BEE has not uplifted the majority of South Africans, specifically poor South Africans. It's uplifted a very small amount of connected cadres. That is the problem with BEE. The ideals behind it are lofty on paper. The ideas of getting the previously disadvantaged or excluded individuals from the economy active in the economy are good ideas. The idea of creating a black middle class is a great idea. We need a bigger black middle class, to be frank. But at the end of the day, that's not really what BE has actually achieved. What it has achieved is a very small and very select amount of individuals that get all the contracts, that scam the system and milk it dry. Those connected cadres are the ones that really benefit from BE, whilst giving nothing back to the country, which has allowed them to basically have the BE benefits in the first place. This is the idea that basically they tender for things like the Eskom contracts, get the money and never do the work, which ultimately doesn't do anybody any favors because we run out of electricity, and we all know what the results of that are. So at the end of the day, BEE has failed dramatically. So the problem is for Fekile to turn around to Donald Trump and say, stay away from our foreign affairs. One has to also ask the logical question, why don't you stay away from Israel's foreign affairs? Yeah, you see how this works. As they used to say, the axe swings two ways. Unfortunately, you see, when you start sticking your own nose in other people's affairs, they generally tend to stick their nose back in yours. And you see, unfortunately, you've also got a little bit of a cross to bear. To suggest that South Africa will not be bullied, well, let me put this another way. Not be bullied or what? What exactly are you going to do? You see, the news is that South Africa is going to send all these ambassadors around the world to garner support before they tackle the US, so that they can basically say, wow, we're all going to stand against you as a collective. The problem is, in the same time, China, Russia, and India, BRICS parties, are all having private meetings with the United States, with the intention of fostering growth with the United States. The United States represents significant investment for all of those parties. Why would they blow off their own domestic ties with the United States for South Africa, the ugly stepchild of the BRICS community, the one country where the economy and the number of people is just like pitiful? We're just like, the social welfare program of BRICS. At the end of the day, they're not going to. And that's the reality. So to say you mustn't get involved in our affairs, or what? The answer is or nothing. Because South Africa doesn't have a position or power to back up any threats, now does it? And the suggestion that Elon is just too stupid to understand what's going on. Elon understands very well. The freaking AI bots understand what's going on. I mean, the reality of the situation is not everybody's going to buy into your complete garbage forever and a day. And, just because you want to keep giving them a turd that you polished up and tried to con them that it was a nice chocolate ice cream, doesn't mean that people are actually going to believe that when they start eating it. When they eat it, they're going to know full well it was a turd. And you can tell them all they want that their taste buds are betraying them. But you know what? Their own personal experience is going to be such that they're not really going to believe your lies. Their mouth will tell them all the truth they need to know. Anyway, that's just my views. You can let me know what you think in the comment section below. Until tomorrow, bye.